Dr. Peyton, thank you so much for your talk. I smiled my way through, as I'm sure many of our audience members did, with all of those pictures. It's just delightful to have this really up-close peek into the life of animals. And we are so grateful for the work that you do. Thank you for all of those wonderful exposures for all of us today. I was thinking about it through the lens of lifestyle medicine and all of our pillars of health and wellness that have been kind of a theme throughout our Wellness Academy this month. And it occurred to me that from the perspective of physical exercise, physical activity, stress reduction, reduction in rates of anxiety, improvement in impression, social engagement. This is so important for us to remember that it isn't all just within our human world, that these things have such a high impact for our health and for our wellness. What are some of the lessons do you think that we can learn from animals? I know you've done amazing work with trauma and rescue. What can we learn, do you think, from animals in terms of the way they process and move through and recover from trauma, dealing with painful injuries, painful circumstances? You mentioned the rescue dogs, really heartbreaking things to think about. What are some of the lessons around resilience when we look at animals that you could share with us?
Yeah, no, I love this question because I feel like the animals teach us so much every day. And one of those major aspects is that, they go through things similar to us in, having the trauma, having injuries, or even I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of abuse cases as well. And and what I love about animals is they do have that in the present moment. And so, just like us, some of them take time to find themselves again. But every day they appreciate what they have. Every day they like, if they're happy, they're happy. And they really do live more in the moment. And I think that's something that's really, really important. And I try to impress on owners as well, because they also pick up a lot about us. Like they're very empathic. And so I think, animals have this innate ability of recovery. When given the supportive care, they're just really good about saying, okay, I have what I need. I now have the support that I need. The day's pretty good. And they continue to grow and see, I think they always see the positive side, which I think is something that we always struggle with as humans, right? We think more about the worries and the concerns. But I think that's what helps people when they have animals because, even when you're feeling down, they'll see that one little positive, like, oh, it's a new day. How exciting. And I think that positive aspect is what really, and the present, living the present and being more positive about little things that are in the present are really what allow animals to have that ability to recover and to have the resilience. And I do think those aspects are what they teach us as well to do better.
Yeah, more present moment, and the
Hmm.
gratitude, right? The gratitude that they have.
Yeah.
What do you think that with animals, similar to humans, that they have the same kind of needs for touch, for verbal engagement, for visual stimulation, for exercise? Do we essentially see a wellness contribution that we're making for our animals when we provide that that array of stimulation for them, the bonding, the connection? How do we regulate them from a wellness space by introducing them to those things? And maybe it's also quiet time for them. Maybe they need more downtime. What is the balance that you see that contributes to our pets' wellness?
Well, I think one of the important things is to recognize that we have sort of generalizations based on species, right? We think of dogs being more interactive. Cats like to be interactive on their terms. We'll say that much. Um, but all species have a different level of how they like to interact. But then there's also an individual component. And so as a general rule, when we look at our companion animals, I think it starts just like in children, it starts young and developing, what we think for normal social activities. So getting them exposure, giving them love and attention. And those things are really important that help that healthy development for that animal. And also in general, providing the same things we would provide for ourselves and our families, that health, the nutrition aspect, the exercise. But I will say that there are some individuals, and we see this in different breeds of dogs, cats, different species like sheep, and where I always say, just like some people are huggers and other people are not huggers, they're animals that will appreciate more of just being with you and don't always enjoy being overwhelmed or hugged. And I always laugh because people will come out and see our sheep or our alpacas and they want to pet them and hug them, but they actually don't like that. So there is a component too where we try to look at the animal and recognize them just like you would as a person, what they need and what they enjoy. And when something is too much or something is what they need, meaning they seek out that interaction or they avoid that interaction. And we also have to learn to respect and read those signals so that we can do what's best for them.
Yeah, right. There's a keen kind of co-understanding, it seems like. That's interesting. You mentioned the anxiety, anxious owner, anxious pet, and one of the suggestions that you had was essential oils for everybody. So a question came up that I think is a really good and interesting one. Are essential oils something that you recommend? Is that species specific? Are there some that should be avoided? Are there some that you recommend more than others? Could you get a little bit more specific about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think essential oils, I love them, but like anything, you have to have some degree of knowledge and discretion in using them. So great question. So with animals, animals in general are more sensitive to essential oils, and one of that being because interestingly enough, they have more hair follicles. And so the more hair follicles you have, actually, the more absorption you can have through your skin. And there is more sensitivity depending on how they can break down some of those essential oils when exposed to them. So, one of the most important things is to think of, yes, there is benefit to using essential oils, just like in people, where we see, such as like peppermint, can decrease substance P, which is something that decreases pain. But you have to make sure that you find a product that has really good ingredients and doesn't have a lot of fillers, because that's where we can get in trouble. And then you also have to find someone, and usually it should be your veterinarian that knows a lot about essential oils and can recommend the right ones, as well as the right dilutions. So, for example, cats, you have to be very careful. Cats don't do very well with types of citrus um, essential oils, as well as if you use too high of concentrate or even diffuse them, they can have issues with it. So, I have no relation to this company, but one company is a veterinarian that I've worked with in the past, and she has essential oils that are diluted appropriately for certain species of animals. And that's what you want to find. That company is Animal EO, but there are others out there, and they have specific dilutions that can be helpful. So the answer is yes, they are awesome, but also make sure you do your research and ask someone who's knowledgeable before you apply or use essential oils around your pet. But
Yeah.
they help us too.
Yeah, they do. That's important. Yeah. What are your thoughts around providers for our pets, veterinarians that may be familiar with some more complementary or alternative forms of treatment that help with some of the conditions that pets would have as well? Dr. Fishman, in your introduction, mentioned that the first time that he met you, you were doing acupuncture with a giraffe. So related to some of those issues and questions around complementary care for our animals, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's really an interesting movement that we've had over several years. Just like in people, when you look at human medicine, it really has evolved because of this need to look at whole body care and how we live and, so much more than just, medication or fluids. And that's what we're looking at with animals. And I think, when you start, you should start with your family veterinarian, and talk with them about some of your interests if you want to pursue more complementary therapies. And if they're not comfortable with that, then they can often refer you, because there are a lot of vets now that are including things like rehabilitation and acupuncture, But also just thinking about, I always say with my students, I think about things that are even more. So for example, if you have a dog with osteoarthritis, thinking about, are they cold? Is your house air conditioned? Maybe they should wear a jacket. What kind of bedding do they have? What kind of supplements do they take? And so um, pet owners can also do a lot of their own research. I encourage that. I think it's important to look at what's out there, but then bring it back to your veterinarian to discuss these things and see what science is there and how we can do that. So there are more and more veterinarians that are including other techniques. You just have to kind of start with your family vet and then see if you can find referrals and do your research. We're always advocates for ourselves, our family, and that includes our pets.
Wonderful. Outstanding talk. Thank you for all of your information. It was just a delight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks.
Bye.